Welcome to My Shift Setup, a series where I talk with real Shift users to see how they've customized their browser. I'm Michael Fouché, VP of Product for Shift. And today I'm chatting with Cait, our customer support manager. Hi, Cait.
Hi, Michael.
Cait, I'm really excited about talking to you today because you and your team know Shift inside and out because you're dealing with our customers every day and you're getting all the questions. So I'm really curious about how you've set up your Shift.
Absolutely. I guess the first thing I'll start with is my base template. I didn't end up going too crazy. As you know, Michael, I am not the biggest proponent of change. I'm a little hesitant. So I did stick with the original Shifty here, which does bring over a lot of the same sort of setup feel as our previous version of Shift. I have made a couple small customizations just to make sure I have the controls up here that I want and that kind of I use on a daily basis. Other than that, I have kind of focused most of my customization onto my spaces and apps. So my primary space is kind of the daily default space that I'm using. I have my calendar, I have my kind of daily notes and to-do list. My email is here, and you will notice that I do have quite a few tabs open in this space. This is just because these are kind of like, if someone sends an email, someone sends a Slack with a link, it kind of serves a bit like my to-do list then kind of as I go through each space. Looking at some of the spaces that I have created, when I moved over from Chrome, I was very heavily using tab groups. And the great thing about Shift was that I was able to actually consolidate some of my tab groups into one space within Shift. So whereas in Chrome, I maybe had upwards of 10 or 12 tab groups. Here, I've been able to reduce it down into 8 different spaces. So my default space is sort of like that kind of constantly coming and going kind of daily work, as well as these core tabs that I always have open. I then also have, this is where I do my weekly metrics. I've got my Google Sheets. I have kind of like a secondary temporary workspace. I call this one my ephemeral workspace. And this is just where kind of things come and go as well. So maybe kind of projects on the go or things like that. I'll have that open here. And I just love the way the spaces work because it keeps my brain organized. I kind of view the spaces almost like floors of a house. So there's lots going on a floor of a house, but you can kind of categorize them and build that mental map, which is so helpful. Another thing I've tried to do to make things easier for me and easier for my brain to make that transition over to Shift is I've tried to match the color, like the theme color of my actual window with the space that I'm in. So you can see my primary space and my sheet space are both green backgrounds to kind of reflect those spaces. And then moving on, the actual window changes color as I move into different spaces. So I found this really handy, especially kind of at the beginning of being in Shift and learning this new setup, because I could take a really quick glance just at the overall window and really kind of narrow down where I am in my setup, essentially. I do have 4 core apps that are consistent across my entire setup. So I've got my Slack, my Asana, ChatGPT, and my OnePass. And those are going to be found in every single space pretty much. I guess the final space that I might highlight is my testing space. And this is mainly because being in support, as kind of questions come through, you maybe want to double check that certain steps are accurate that you're sending out to a user. So I use this space to kind of make changes, add apps, test things out. And then that way it's not interfering too much with my daily setup.
Wow, Cait, that's a lot of information you just passed through, and that's amazing. And I don't even know where to start here, but you're doing a lot of cool things in there differently than what people have. And I think this is really interesting and probably key to a lot of our users is because you are such a heavy Chrome user and a tab group user in Chrome. I can even see some things I'm going, okay, that's interesting. Why is she doing that? Maybe you can talk me through it a little bit. If you go back to your first space, you're still leveraging tabs really in an interesting way rather than perhaps putting them in apps. And I'm just curious why you've done that. Is that just comfort or?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely kind of habit. I did set them up as apps when I initially was kind of playing around with my setup.
Yeah.
And I found that out of sight, out of mind, unfortunately, was kind of what was happening with these. Because in my Chrome setup, these were always my first three tabs. It's just automatically where I go to. And I'm constantly kind of just habitually checking these three for new things coming in, new meetings that have been added. How's my to do list coming for the day? So I find for me, the tabs act as a third layer of organization. I try to focus my apps more on things that I'm checking daily or using daily. And then I accept for these three. These are definitely ones I use daily.
Yeah, I think that's amazing feedback. And one thing we've tried really hard as a product team is, for those users who are new to Shift and coming in, and like yourself, we're heavy Chrome users, we pride ourselves in having an adaptable interface to meet your needs. Because we may be a little opinionated sometimes in how we do things, but we are working really hard to allow people to continue to do things the way they did them. If they like that and that works for them, and that's great. And I think this is awesome that you recognized, hey, I have a pattern and it works and I'm going to recreate it here. And sure enough, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds in some ways, right? You're able to create that separation between your spaces, but when you're in that space, you have your own routine and it's effective.
I think that was part of the strategy is like, how can I keep it as familiar as possible so I don't lose too much time as my brain gets used to the change? And then the beauty is once you have gotten used to that change, now I can go in and make more customizations and there's less for my brain to kind of catch up on.
Okay, so you've been sitting with this for a while. What's the shift feature that you're using that you think saves you the most time?
I think one of the things that I've really loved is when it comes to apps and the ability to have that app shortcut. As I said, I have those 4 core apps that I have across every single space. And it makes it super handy because if somebody, let's say, sends me a link over Slack, maybe I happen to be in my kind of primary space here. I open a link in Slack. Maybe that link is to a ticket. Maybe it's from one of my customer support team members. If I go into my Slack or go into my ticket space here and jump to Slack, it's bringing me to the exact same place that I was. It's just one app persistent across all the spaces. So that was huge in saving time when I was initially setting up my spaces and getting my apps in there.
Great. That's a great call out. One of the other benefits of that obviously is you could have set up that app in every one of those spaces as a separate app, even though they're pointing the same thing, but that would have meant additional resource usage on the computer and could have slowed it down. And with the shortcuts, because it lives in each of those spaces, you even get the unread counts, but it is pointing to the exact same web rendering page. So it doesn't take up additional resources, but our system tracks where you're going to it and from. So I like that feature too. I think it's a huge plus. Kind of on that same vein, what do you think is kind of an underrated or hidden feature of Shift that people don't know about?
Yeah. So for this one, I'm going to jump into my kind of metrics, my sheets one here, and it is our smart links feature. And this I've been really enjoying because it has allowed me to pull things that maybe I would have once had as a main, like a tab in my main tab bar. But now I can open those links just within the app. And you can see that it's created this sort of secondary tab bar that is specific to the app that I'm in. Instead of having all of these as, tabs up along my top bar, and then I know, all I have to do is click on my Google Sheets and I've got access to all of the different pages that I need. And it's not going to kind of overwrite or replace, anything that's maybe been previously opened in this section.
Okay, well, I think the last question I really have for you is how does Shift specifically help you as a customer support manager, like in your role?
Yeah, I think for me, it helps save time. Once you've kind of got over the change, you've got used to your setup, it's kind of mentally mapped for me now, kind of where everything lives. So it does make it really easy to kind of move between different things, right? I usually start my morning, checking my calendar, checking my inbox right there in my primary space. And then I usually will jump down to tickets and start going through. And you don't really have to think. You're just like, okay, green space, blue space. You can really reduce it down to really quick kind of mental changes. So it really kind of cleans up that mental workload that you might be doing as you're switching between the different tasks in your day.
This has been amazing and quite an eye-opener. I'm excited to see how you continue to exploit the features in Shift to adapt to your style of working and sort of learnings you have coming from Chrome and tab groups, and how you can recreate some of those capabilities within Shift that work for you. And hopefully people can learn from that. So,
100%.
Cait, I really want to thank you for your time today. And I'm excited to see, when we next chat, how your setup has changed.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Michael. This has been great.